Okay, we're here for Research Lesson 3. Today we're going to consider the audience, the purpose, the tone, and the publication. So imagine you're a filmmaker who wants to create a blockbuster romantic comedy. As you write the movie script, you must take into account the movie's audience, purpose, and tone, and you must consider how the movie will be distributed or published. Your purpose is to entertain, so you write a lightweight comedy with appealing characters. The tone of your script is fun and breezy, yet also sentimental. Your movie will be published by being shown in a movie theater, so you want to make it so that it is of the appropriate length. And finally, you make sure that the movie's story and message will appeal to teenagers, the movie's target audience. So audience, purpose, tone, and publication are as important in research as they are in making movies. These four interrelated elements should drive every decision you make during the research process. What is my purpose? How will I publish? Who is my audience? And what tone is appropriate? So these are the four topics that this lesson is going to look at. First, let's consider purpose. The purpose of doing research is to answer questions and make discoveries. However, researchers don't just assemble a collection of facts. They synthesize the facts that they find and combine them with their own experiences and insights. So the purpose of publishing research is to share your discoveries and insights with an audience. So to refine or pinpoint your purpose, you have to write research questions. And we've talked about this for a couple weeks now. We've also talked about this in your grammar lessons. Let's look at this example, and we won't read all of the examples from this student's choice of writing a paper which compares Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice with Helen Fielding's Bridget Jones's Diary, which is a lot more current with our times. So the first question is, how is the Mr. Darcy in Bridget Jones's Diary similar or different from the Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice? And what themes are explored in Pride and Prejudice, and how are they updated for modern times in Bridget Jones's Diary? So you can see how it's refining or pinpointing that purpose of the writing by asking the how and what question. Now let's look at this research tip that you will find familiar. Use the reporter's 5 W how questions to help you ponder possible directions of your project. So you can see what they did here: the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And from our last lesson, remember, you start out and you write a general question of who, what, when, why, where, and how. And then you take your general questions and refine those to become specific questions. That will help you pinpoint your purpose, but it will also direct your research. So having looked at purpose, let's consider publishing options. If you determine how you're going to publish your research, you can plan better. You can have a better idea of your audience and of the proper length, the format, and the tone of your project. So there are traditional options for publishing: the formal research paper, the magazine article, and a class presentation. Now when we do our formal publication, you are going to each write a research paper. When you do your technology presentation of your information, you will be back together with your group and you will do, I'm not exactly sure what project you're going to do yet, but these are 3 choices. A hyperlinked research paper, and if you look here you can see the blue links in there, which means if you click on one of those it takes you out onto the internet and gives you more information. Here is a podcast. A podcast is a voice thread, and it's not going to be one of our options either. We will possibly do a video cast, but we will not do a podcast. And then we have a wiki. You, in fact, know what a wiki is because you probably have used one before. In fact, I would probably be a good bet that every single person watching this has at some time or other used Wikipedia. That is a wiki. A wiki is a collaborative website on which many users can post and edit their content. Wikis are publication options that allow students to post their research findings online easily. We're not going to use a wiki. Wiki is a good choice, but not the best one for us. Last year when I was in school, all spring, I published my work to a wiki, and then at the end of 4 months, we published it to a web page using Google Sites. So it is an option, but unless somebody is clamoring to do that, it won't be an option that we're going to use. So we've looked at purpose, and our purpose is to share our findings. Then we've looked at publication. We're going to do a traditional publication of a research paper, and we're going to do a technology publication in some format, not yet decided. And then we go on to looking at our audience. So we have to identify our audience based on our topic, our purpose, and our publication format. If you are writing for a very specific audience, you should gather information about that audience. For example, you might want to know your audience's age, their geographical location, their interests, or their educational background. Armed with this knowledge, you can better tailor your research project to your audience. Let's say your audience is a high school students. These questions can help you think about your audience. So you need to make sure you write these down because you are going to specifically use these questions when you write your research paper and do your research. What part of my topic will my audience find interesting? What does my audience already know about my topic? And what new information does my audience need to learn? Now, these are critical questions that you'll need to answer for yourself when you start the process of determining your audience. It's very important to communicate information at the right level of understanding to your audience. And this is also pretty important here. You don't want to waste your audience's members' time by giving information that they already know, or information that is too difficult for them to understand. For instance, if you're writing a literary paper for an audience of literature professors, you won't have to explain literary terms. But if you're writing that same paper for a group of high school kids, you'd want to explain the literary terms and outline the plot and themes of the book that you were discussing. So who you're writing to will influence how you write and what information you put in your research project. So we've looked at purpose, we've looked at publication, we've looked at audience, and now we're going to look at tone. So tone is the attitude that you convey through your writing. The tone of a research project can vary from very formal to very informal depending on how it's published. When using a formal tone, use a third-person point of view and you avoid the pronoun I. When you're using a formal tone, you avoid slang, colloquial expressions, and contractions. On the other hand, if you're going informal, you use first-person point of view and you do include the slang, the colloquial expressions, and the contractions. Academic and business audiences usually require a formal tone, whereas pop culture audiences such as concert goers, movie fans, and people who read popular websites often prefer an informal tone. What we're going to do here in school this year, you will need to have a formal tone. So let's determine which of these is formal and which is informal. The first one, The writing style of Pride and Prejudice is very witty but extremely formal, whereas Bridget Jones's Diary revels in British colloquialism and slapdash abbreviations, a forerunner of today's text messages. That's our first example. The second is, when I first started reading Bridget Jones's Diary, I didn't know what to make of it. It uses strange abbreviations and British slang. I soon caught on and started enjoying the book. The way Bridget writes her diary is the way many people write. So, which is formal? That's right, the first one. So, if they want their movies to match their vision, filmmakers must consider their purpose, method of publication, the audience, and the tone during the writing process. Similarly, if you consider purpose, method of publication, audience, and tone before you begin your research project, your project will have a much greater chance of success. So let's review what we've looked at in Lesson 3 of considering audience, purpose, tone, and publication. First, our purpose is to share your findings. Writing research questions will help you pinpoint your purpose. Publication options, we had the traditional options, and of which you will be writing a research paper, and the technology options, of which you will be doing one too, but we haven't yet decided the format. Then with your audience, you're going to identify your audience, you find out specifics about your audience and know the level of communication to use. And then the tone is a formal tone. Okay, so you're going to answer your question responses for these notes. Bring any questions that you have to class, and we will be determining your research groups and starting to pick your topics and create research questions. So I'll see you in class.